Victor Hugo said, "There is nothing in the world more powerful than an idea whose time has come." And 5 years ago, roughly, when I started down my journey of building a personal brand, starting to share my story on YouTube, writing books about it, I came headlong up against this reality that Victor Hugo was only partially right. An idea is powerful, and when an idea's time has come, it can change the world. But at the end of the day, an idea is only as effective as your ability to communicate it. And so if you have a world-changing, earth-shattering idea, but you lack the ability to communicate that idea influentially, impactfully, in a way that makes people pay attention and then actually want to take action in alignment with your vision, then your idea is not going to go anywhere. It's going to die inside of you. And I was wrestling with this because in business and in life, a lot of the discontent that we feel is often that we have these ideas inside of us that we know have more potential that we just simply can't realize because we struggle to communicate it and get it across to people. And if you've ever told somebody a story, if you've ever told somebody a big, audacious idea and it just kind of fell on deaf ears and you looked at them with glazed over eyes and you thought they just don't get it, then you understand how like impotent that can make you feel when you know you have this great idea. It could change the world, but nobody's really paying attention to it. So I went down this rabbit hole years ago of figuring out, okay, how can I learn to communicate my ideas more effectively, more persuasively? And so what I want to share with you in this video is how to learn a particular way of speaking. I'm going to give you 3 ideas that you can implement into your life, very tactical ideas that you can immediately start implementing to become a more persuasive and influential communicator. Truly, like learning to speak like this will give you an unfair advantage in business and in life. So the very first thing that you have to do is you have to have something worth saying, right? And this is surprising, perhaps, but when many years ago I was studying podcasters. I was studying guests on podcasts because I was doing podcast circuits. It was a way that we were using to grow one of my businesses. And so I would go on about 100 podcasts per year. Now, a lot of people, what they do is they just go on the podcast circuit and they just answer the same questions and they just kind of fumble through it. And a lot of them aren't very engaging. It's not very entertaining. And so those episodes, they don't go anywhere. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to go on these podcast tours if the episodes weren't going to be fantastic, if they weren't actually going to engage people in a way that makes them want to sit around and listen to them. And so I would pay attention to who made me lean in, who made me perk up and pay attention, and what were the commonalities between those people, what were they doing that was so interesting. And one of the things I found was the people that were the most compelling were the ones that had deep, compelling ideas to share. They weren't just regurgitating things, cliches that I'd heard from countless other people. They were saying maybe the same core idea, but they were packaging it and framing it in a completely different way. And the reason they were able to do this, I found, is because they had taken the time before ever getting onto a show, before ever trying to communicate the idea, whether that's on a podcast or that's in a boardroom meeting or it's just in a one-on-one meeting with the staff, right? They took the time before they ever sat down to try to communicate the idea to figure out what it is that they actually thought about that idea. So before you can speak, you got to think. And the truth is that most people don't spend the time to actually sit around and think. Like, thinking ain't easy. And so what we do is we become what I call lily pad thinkers, where we're just hopping across the lily pads of our minds like a little frog. We're never going deep below the surface to really try to understand, like, what's at the bottom of this pond? What do I actually believe on this topic? And so if you want to be a great speaker, if you want to have like the cheat code, have something interesting to say. And so spend time actually thinking through topics and like coming to an opinion, actually have a perspective, an insight that's unique to you. Now, here's the cheat code for that is writing. Writing is the physical manifestation of your ephemeral thoughts. It is the way that you take those thoughts and you make them concrete and you wrestle with them. And I have found that there is like an unfair advantage to the people who have taken the time to think through their thoughts deeply through the form of writing that then translates to their ability to verbally communicate it. And it just comes across so articulate, so insightful, And that right there, if you were to do nothing else, just to sit down and actually take, like, what are the 5 to 10 big topics in your life, or philosophies or values or unique positions that you have in the marketplace, like unique insights, and just actually write out what it is that you think on that topic, why you've come to that perspective, what are the things that you disagree with. Just going through that exercise alone with nothing else, even if you don't do the next 2 things I'm going to share with you, that alone will make you a more impactful speaker. I promise you. Number 2, the people, again, as I'm looking at the podcast landscape, because I think that's a really great place to go find really effective speakers, is the people that were the most effective, they did something very unique. They don't just go and teach. They don't just educate. They don't just have this insight and then say, bam, here's the insight. What they do is they take that insight and they frame it within a story. So every insight is framed within a story because they understand that an idea is impactful, but the story is the vehicle through which that idea is, transported from me to you. If I just throw the idea at you, it's not nearly as effective as if I first package it within a story, because the human brain has evolved to consume, to remember, to be emotionally affected by story, not by facts. And so if I just throw the facts at you, they might be very compelling facts. They might be very convincing facts, very logical based. But if I can't pierce through to the more lizard part of your brain, the one that's emotionally driven, what we would call the ethos, right? If I can't get to that part of you, then it's very unlikely that the idea that I'm trying to communicate to you is actually going to stick in a meaningful way. So you'll notice if you go to my main channel, right, my main YouTube channel, Anthony Vicino, if you go watch all of those videos, all of the ideas that I share, they're always packaged within the frame of a story. And that way, I think of the story as like a little handle. It's a handle for the idea that you can take with you, and you can just carry it around with you. If not, I'm throwing a bunch of Lego blocks at you, and you're trying to catch them, and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do with all of these things. But if I give you a story, it's like this nice little box that you can put all your little Legos inside, all my ideas, right? And then you can take them with you. So always be framing within the context of a story. The third thing that you can do is to become a way better communicator, like to learn how to be a top 1%er, is you need to practice and review yourself speaking and communicating. So when I started back in 2019, I think it probably would have been, I think that's when I started getting serious about Instagram, or at least getting interested in becoming a better verbal communicator. And I really, in particular, wanted to get better communicating impromptu like this for a camera. And so what I did was I created an Instagram account, and then every day for a year, I would record a 1-minute video on a particular topic, and then I would share it. And then I would go back and I would watch that video. But the main thing was I first forced myself to do the reps every single day of sitting down and talking to a camera or to another person. Like, if you want to become a better speaker, a better communicator, you need to communicate more. But then it's not just enough to do the reps. It's like, as Naval said, it's not about 10,000 hours. It's about 10,000 iterations. And so that's where the review comes in. Actually watch yourself back on the game film and review and say, like, what am I doing well and what am I doing poorly? Now, a lot of people, when they want to become a better communicator, they think they need to do more. They're like, I need to learn how to do what I'm doing with my hands. How do I communicate? How do I gesticulate effectively, right? What do I do with these weird things? The first thing I would focus on is, instead of adding things, is instead remove the things that are awkward and weird. So the really obvious things is remove the ums, remove the ahs, make spaces, learn how to use the pacing of your words to communicate an idea. For myself, another one, like I still work on this one, is lip smacks. Like that. A lot of people will do these little lip smacks as they're between ideas. Even if you get rid of the ums and the ahs, they still go like that. That's not sexy. Like, that's not a good form of communication. That's not adding anything. So, like, go find your picadillos in the video by reviewing them, and then slowly but surely become conscious of them as you do more iterations and try to remove them. Slowly but surely you will become a more effective communicator. Now, do not underestimate how much work is required to become a great communicator. I think this is another thing that we take for granted, is like, you see somebody, you might look to me and say, like, Anthony is a pretty good communicator. I would say I'm above average. But then I look at other people like Jordan Peterson, and I'm like, that guy's at a different level. Like, well, at least he used to be. These days, he's just angry. But like, there's levels to the game, and there's people that are like fantastic. And it's really easy just to assume that they're naturally gifted, naturally talented, and they've always just been verbally gifted. I know for myself, I have not been always verbally gifted. It's a skill that you hone and you practice. And one of the frames that's helped me a lot, especially when I'm giving keynotes, I'll go give keynotes to audiences of 1,000, 2,000 people. For 45 minutes, that's 1,000 people who are giving me 45 minutes of their time. That's a lot of time. If you were to calculate the time value of their money, if like the hourly wage of every person in that room was say $100 and you're spending an hour with them and there's 1,000 people and they're like, man, that should be a pretty damn good speech. And so in the theater world, what they recommend is that you practice 2 hours for every 1 minute of speaking that you do on the stage. So for every 1 minute worth of speaking that they do, they practice for 2 hours. So if you have a 40-minute speech, that means you practice that speech for 80 hours. And I think a lot of people, when I share that number with them, they go, that's ridiculous. Truly, it's a lot of rehearsal, but that's what it takes if you want to become great. Now, I'm not saying you need to do that for every keynote or for every speech, every time you go to give like a presentation at work or anything like that. But preparation can make you look a whole lot better than you even realize, even a small amount of it. So instead, maybe if you have a 10-minute presentation to give to your boss next week, maybe instead of just rehearsing it 2 or 3 times, try rehearsing it 50 times. Give that a shot. Let's see where that gets you. I'm going to promise you that it's going to make you a whole lot better. But that's the process. If you do this and you keep iterating, you keep improving, you keep writing every single day, keep mining the depths of your soul to figure out what it is that you actually think about things so that you have interesting things to say. You frame everything within the context of a story, and then you practice. You're just maniacal about practicing and rehearsing. You're going to become a fantastic communicator. And that right there is a cheat code in the game of business, in the game of life, where anybody else is concerned. Your ability to communicate effectively, persuasively, influentially is a freaking cheat code. So use this to do good. Do not abuse these powers. And that's all I got. I'll see you guys in the next episode.